Hi everybody, it's Whitney from All the Shelves, and today I want to talk to you about William Faulkner's As I Lay Dying. And just to start us off, let's get my gushing out of the way. I loved this book. I liked it so much. I read this book with Kate Howe and Stephanie from That's What She Read, and in a previous video I talked about how amazing this buddy reading experience was. It was actually my first buddy read with people on booktube. I've obviously been in book clubs and read things with my friends and husband and whatever. I do bookish things. I talk about books in seminars. I talk about books with my students. I have people talk at me about books. I've done all of that, and I really loved the format of talking with people from booktube about this book in particular. We read it really slowly. We took about 30 to 40 pages a day at the most, and we just talked about how we were responding to the chapters, which parts we found very confusing, which with Faulkner came up quite a bit, and which parts we were sort of figuring out and piecing together. And both Kate and Stephanie had really amazing insights, so please go check out their channels if you're not already subscribed. Probably you already are, but they both read a lot of really challenging material and they talk about it in intelligent and really joyful ways. They're both very thoughtful and kind people, and I just loved this experience. But that's not to say that As I Lay Dying wouldn't be an amazing book to read literally in any context. Read it in the summer, read it in the spring, read it in the fall or the winter, read it at the beach, read it in the mountains, read it in your bed. Just read the book. It is so good. Faulkner has a reputation of being very difficult, and As I Lay Dying is actually one of his books that I've heard is one of his more difficult books. I've tried to make it through The Sound and the Fury 3 times now, and I've never made it all the way through, despite my best intentions. So I was kind of afraid of reading this book. It would have been one thing if it was on my own, but this was with 2 other people that I really respect, and so I went into the thing being oh man, how am I going to impress them when I don't even know what's going on? And the initial chapters are a little bit confusing. Not as confusing as I was expecting, so that's good news if you're not really wanting to devote the amount of time that a Faulkner novel might demand of you. You understand the plot as it's going along, although you might miss certain things, and there are always a lot of plot summaries online that you could check out to help you fill in those blanks if you so desire. But the joy of reading Faulkner, I think, is that you can miss those things, but you can still take a lot out of the novel just through the ways that he's using language innovatively. So it's okay if you miss things that are sort of going on in the plot of the novel, not only because later in subsequent sections he might explain that thing and clarify it for you, but also because the plot is not really the driving force of the book. It's more like character built through language, and so you don't really even have to understand exactly what the language is saying to understand how that character is being developed. And that's not to say that you wouldn't understand the characters, or that you would just have to kind of make inferences and intuit what the characters are doing. There are points that are very clear and not difficult to understand. It's just that some of the language and some of the characters are a bit more obscure and ambiguous than others. Alright, so how about a little recap of the plot? Just to warn you, I'm going to go to about halfway through the novel, so if you don't want to know anything about it, then you might want to skip the next minute or so when I'm talking about it, but I really don't think that knowing the plot of the novel, even up till the very end, is really going to hinder your enjoyment of it at all. But anyway, I will go to about the halfway point. So the book is about this dysfunctional, kind of lower class farming family. You've got the dad, Ants, and the mom, Addie, and then you have a series of children. There's Cash and Darl and Jewel and Dewey Dell and Vardaman. Dewey Dell is for sure the name of my next dog. It's gotta be, right? Dewey Dell. It's so cute. When the novel begins, the family is all dealing with the fact that Addie is on her deathbed. Cash is literally making the coffin for his mother outside of his mother's window while she sits there and sort of observes and makes sure that he's doing it right and up to her standards. And then you've got Jewel, who's sort of this wild spirit who is having a very hard time with his mom's death. You have Darl, who seems to be a bit more logical and a bit more able to comprehend the difference between life and death. You have Dewey Dell, who's gotten herself into a spot of trouble, and if you know anything about like Southern novels in the 1930s, you know that means that she is pregnant. So you have Dewey Dell, who's looking to her mom as this example of like what women should be, and then you have the youngest child, Vardaman, who is having a really hard time understanding what's happening. So you can imagine how Vardaman's chapter is like pretty difficult to understand. He's a child, and it's written in the kind of vernacular that a child without any education at all might understand death and the world around him. About a quarter of the way through the novel, Addie dies, and according to her wishes, she wants to be buried with her family and not her husband's family. And so, trying to honor her wishes, the family all puts her into her coffin that was already being made, puts her on a wagon, and sets out on this journey to go bury her somewhere. Well, her body is rotting. There are buzzards flying around them, attracted to this just like grotesque, disgusting family as they travel through the countryside to get to where Addie's family is. And as they're traveling through their community, they have to deal with their reputation and the way that people are seeing them. Not only people who have known them to be this kind of lower class, just kind of unfortunate family, but also then the new people that they meet along the road that are like, oh my God, what is that smell? Oh, it's a dead body. It's my mom's dead body. We carry her around in a wagon. So there's a lot of examination in this novel of the body, of the disillusion, and I mean that in a very like literal way of the body, as it's like literally falling apart. And then there is also a lot about the disillusion of a family, as the family is sort of coming into conflict over their mother's death and how they're dealing with their mother's death. And there's the disillusion of of individual identities, when people are trying to understand what does it mean to exist and not exist, then what am I and what is, you know, out there, what is nature, what's not me. So there's a lot about like existential crises that some of these characters are having, and what's so interesting is that some characters, like Darl for example, are able to really articulate that crisis that they're having, while other characters cannot understand it at all and are trying to put it in terms that they can understand, which is a really interesting way, I think, of thinking about how people actually think about the world. Like, I think that the language in this book is so fascinating because it really represents how people think things to themselves. Sometimes things aren't fully articulated. Sometimes things remain very vague. There's a real lack of pronouns and names because when you're thinking about the world around you, you're not naming everything. Rather than trying to sort of control nature, you're just sort of trying to observe it and absorb it and figure out what it means for you. And what all of this leads to is prose that is just like magnificent. So I have this line that describes the setting of the South that I just love. It says, "That's the one trouble with this country. Everything, weather, all hangs on too long," which, what an amazing way to describe the South in the 1930s, and sort of the South reeling from the effects of the Civil War and Reconstruction still in the 1930s, and then, you know, on top of that, the Great Depression, and how people are just trying to get along. Everything seems to just hang on too long. It's too languid. The past is too forceful and it's too all-encompassing. And then there are like less metaphysical lines that I thought were just amazing. When Vardaman hears that his mom has died, he talks about how he's vomiting his crying. Like, I kept vomiting. I was vomiting my crying. So here he's smelling this horse and he's saying, "Smelling into my nose where the sickness is beginning to cry, vomiting the crying, and then I can breathe, vomiting it. It makes a lot of noise. I can smell the life running up from under my hands, up my arms, and then I can leave the stall." It's really quite amazing to me. There's this other moment that I remember when Darl is talking to somebody and he says that he can hear teeth in his breath, which, I mean, incredible. Like, right? That's incredible. I can hear teeth in his breath. Alright, so I warned you that I really love this book. I could go on for days about this, and I feel like Kate and Stephanie and I literally went on for days about this book. We all three talked about how we have like a reading hangover from reading it because it was just so incredible and moving to us. So that again is As I Lay Dying, the second one in my little bind up here. Let me know if you've read it, if you liked it. This is one that's assigned in school sometimes, but I feel like not as much as we move towards maybe more simplistic text in the classroom, but perhaps you encountered it in college or something like that. Let me know what you think of it if you're interested in reading it, and I will talk to you later.